gesture. No, that
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 198. Breaking right now, Katherine Blakelock, the founder of the Brexit Party, has today filed a police complaint against Nigel Farage.
I have today presented the Metropolitan Police with 29 documents relating to the Brexit Party and Mr. Nigel Farage. 3 people will be named.
So I'm going to bring you her full statement in my digest next. Then we will hear from Ms. Blakelock live in an exclusive interview alongside Connor Tomlinson. This shocking development today comes as Reform MP Rupert Lowe releases a KC report about the investigation by the party into him, which he says shows Nigel Farage must never become Prime Minister. So we're going to navigate our way through all of this mess, all of this drama together momentarily. Also coming up on the show today, Livia Tossici-Bolt found guilty for a silent abortion protest in a move that will infuriate US Vice President JD Vance and has prompted GB News host Nana Akua, my friend, to make her own astonishing abortion revelation. I'm going to show you this, it really matters. And LBC and the MSM are truly going mad over the Netflix piece of fiction Adolescence. There is most definitely another psyop in play, folks, so we're going to tackle that too. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, well, more astonishing revelations, can't believe this is a Friday, that link the Sussex squad to the closest ally of Meghan Markle, a man who appeared on her Netflix series. Shocking reporting involving our very own, according to Taz, who is going to hit back at Daniel Martin here on the show. Then we'll get analysis from our Royal Mastermind, Angela Levin. It's all going on today. Sign up to watch the uncancelled after show on Substack, www.outspoken.live. It is a Friday, so of course we'll also be unveiling the worst Briton in the world this week. The votes are from your winners of Union Jackass throughout the week. So on Monday we had Tahir Ali, on Tuesday we had James O'Brien, on Wednesday we had Prince Harry, on Thursday we had Sadiq Khan. Tens of thousands of you have already voted. I will bring you the worst Briton in the world this week at the end of the show. It's an important one today. Let's go. Katherine Blakelock, the founder of the Brexit Party, has today filed a police complaint against Nigel Farage. Now, before any of my Reform UK supporting viewers suggest I should not be covering this story just a month out from critical local elections where Farage could make game-changing gains, I'm sorry, I am an independent journalist, not a propagandist. You'll remember I was the first to predict Nigel, a former colleague of mine, for 3 years at GB News, who I have absolutely no personal issues with. I was the first to predict that I think he'll become the UK's Prime Minister by 2029. But the lawfare against Rupert Lowe, Reform's top-performing MP, has changed the game somewhat on the right and has prompted Katherine Blakelock, again, let me remind you, she is the founder of the Brexit Party, to record this astonishing statement earlier today.
My name is Katherine Blakelock, and I was the founder of the Brexit Party. Today is Friday, the 4th of April, 2025. I have today presented the Metropolitan Police with 29 documents relating to the Brexit Party and Mr. Nigel Farage. 3 people will be named. I have asked the police to investigate the following charges. 1. Fraudulent breach of trust. I specifically set the company up as a not-for-profit with a trust document and 2 trustees. After I left, the trust document disappeared, turning the company back into a for-profit. The trust is still held by my solicitors and was referenced in documentation that was filed at Companies House. 2. Fraudulent documentation procedures at Companies House. 3. Relentless and incessant emotional harassment or bullying of myself as they broke me down in order to obtain my shares. Thank you.
Now, Katherine will be here to respond in an exclusive Outspoken interview shortly, where I will, of course, ask her, is this just sour grapes, given Reform have recovered in the polls since their post-Rupert slump and look set to change the game next month? Like, look at this today from Find Out Now, which shows Reform leading by a huge 6% over Labour and 8% over the Tories. Or you've got this council by-election last night in Sutton's southeast St Helens, where Reform UK actually gained from the Lib Dems. And as the Mercian said, of course, Reform are expected to pick up councils from Tories and Labour, but picking up councils from Lib Dems is huge. But Blaicklock agrees with Rupert Lowe that Farage must never be Prime Minister. She has presented an exhaustive list of documents to the police today, including copies of various emails and letters from 2019 and legal advice from her solicitors and barristers at the time advising about what she believes was done illegally. This all comes at a torrid time for Farage after this shock threat from Lawrence Fox.
I've been to enough parties with enough members of the very, very acceptable British establishment to bury some people, and I could actually bury Farage if I wanted to, in one tweet.
Not to mention this leaked recording from senior Tory Esther McVeigh about a secret Conservative Reform pact.
What you want to do is, like I said, where UKIP came second and we were a very, very distant fourth, like in Runcorn, like where Mike Amesbury punched his constituents, you'd probably say there, let Reform win that seat, because you might need them in the southwest, that we win a seat.
And Nigel being criticised for his U-turn on Reform launching a rape gang inquiry for which Rupert Lowe is taking forward and is about to raise £500,000.
Point me holding an inquiry into this, or Rupert Lowe holding an inquiry into this, unless it has statutory powers.
If they won't do it, we at Reform will do it. I will have no difficulty in raising the money to do this whatsoever. We'll appoint independent ex-judges and experts, and we will have this out in public. And I hope, Sir Keir...
Will you have the statutory powers that will be granted to you through a public inquiry?
No, I won't have the statutory powers, but I tell you what, I think this would garner such massive public support that anybody that was asked to appear that didn't appear would look terrible.
There's no point me holding an inquiry into this, or Rupert Lowe holding an inquiry into this, unless it has statutory powers.
Meanwhile, today, Rupert Lowe has presented his own KC report into Reform UK's KC investigation into him. He says his report proves that Farage is not fit to be PM. This is from Rupert Lowe. He says an independent review conducted by a leading KC qualified in the appropriate area of law at Blackstone Chambers has raised serious concerns about the integrity, fairness and independence of the investigation carried out by Reform UK into allegations against me. In 67 years, I have never seen such vile and unprofessional behaviour, including, but not limited to, publicly shaming my staff without even giving them the opportunity to respond to the false and damaging accusations. Reform has proven itself not only unfit to govern, but unfit to sit in the House of Commons. To handle such a basic process in a hideously unprofessional and malicious manner is simply unacceptable. This report has been sent to the relevant parliamentary authorities and my own legal teams. I asked reasonable questions of Farage after months of pushing behind the scenes. My punishment for bruising his ego, a concerted campaign to smear my name and reputation. And then the killer line from Rupert Lowe, Farage must never be Prime Minister. So to say the right is divided over Reform UK is now an understatement. What I want to do now is bring in the Brexit Party founder, Katherine Blakelock, who has today filed this police report against Farage with the Met, alongside Connor Tomlinson, senior contributor to Courage Media and co-host of the New Cultural Forum's Deprogrammed podcast. Katherine Blakelock, wow, big news that you've decided to do this just 4 weeks out from this critical local elections campaign for Reform UK. I believe you're also going to be standing against the Reform candidate in the Runcorn by-election. So what about people who say, Katherine, you've had all of these documents, right, for the past 5 years, 6 years. Is this just a political hit job now on Nigel Farage? Are you just engaging in the same sort of lawfare that he engaged in versus Rupert Lowe?
Well, if I'd wanted to do something, I could have done it before the Brexit Party had even got started. And I could have stopped Nigel Farage standing in the last European elections and all the MEPs. I am the biggest patriot going. I have done everything for my country. I have not done it for myself. I wanted Brexit, and I wanted to give Nigel and those MEPs the chance to get Brexit. And I could have done it after that, but I didn't. And in fact, I went and helped Rupert Lowe, even though I was standing for the English Democrats and I live near Great Yarmouth. I've lived there for 60 years. My father came when I was 6 months old. I decided that it was ridiculous, and I stood on a platform and I helped Rupert, and I said, don't vote for me, vote for Rupert. So even up to 2024 general election, I was supporting reform and wanted a proper right-wing party that would do what needs to be done to get Brexit, to solve the immigration problems, to solve all the problems that we know exist. So I've actually not done it. But when they did what they did to Rupert, the line was crossed. There had been a number of policy changes that were also just unfathomable. Like, for example, when Nigel said on the Stephen Edrington show that he wasn't going to deport illegal immigrants. I just thought, well, what is the point of this party? It's just going to become the new Conservative Party. And so I saw red over it, as did many other people, and I cannot vote for this. And I know what's gone on inside, and I have no doubt what they did to Rupert, and I have been the brunt of that type of behaviour before.
And effectively, you're saying that back in April 2019, you were illegally pressured into handing over your shares in the Brexit Party, including receiving a text at 5:20 a.m. in the morning from Nigel Farage himself.
Well, it's slightly more complicated in that I had already set a trust document up in the February, and I'd already given 50% of my shares. So it was the remainder of the 50% that I was a trustee in. But things got so difficult and the position was so problematic, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've been involved in big business and small business, and I know how things should be done, and things were not being done. In fact, things were very bad which were being done. And so I actually called up my own solicitor against my own party to take advice. And then we were involved with another solicitor as well. And it got to the point where I actually paid for a counsel, for a barrister, over Easter 2019 weekend to look at what the position was.
And they informed you that there had been illegality?
Oh, there's no question about the fact that there had been that there were a number of parts to this. The part I'm really focusing in on is what's happening to the trust document after I left. This is really crucial because what we're talking about in the barrister's opinion is before I had left, when I was still a director and I was still a trustee. That's the part two. But what I am concerned about is how they got my shares out of me and what they did thereafter. Now, one of the complaints that has been continual throughout the whole process of the Brexit Party was the fact that this was a limited company, limited by shares. It was not my intention to have a company for profit or limited by shares. And it was, in fact, my specific not intention for that it would be a not-for-profit. I don't think political parties should be for profit. And so there was varying recommendations and various ways that this could have been changed. And the reason it was set up it was literally, I bought a name and then we needed to set the structure up. And the way that it was done meant that it enabled them to remove the trust document. Now, by removing that trust document, they effectively turned that company back into a for-profit. If I had bought another company and changed the numbers over and made it a company limited by guarantee, they would never have been able to do that. But the advice from Nigel's team and various people was to do it another way. And Private Eye looked at this a couple of times. We know that the trust document exists. It's in my solicitor's office. There was mumbling from the last treasurer about, well, it wasn't executed properly, but it was executed. You can see it in the Companies House record. The issue is what happened to it thereafter. As far as I can see, and I do not have the paper trail because once I left and I was not removed, I left.
Because just to clarify for folk who don't know, Nigel Farage said that you were just an administrator and that you were booted out of the party for so-called Islamophobia.
I was fired, according to Nigel Farage.
And you dispute that?
He couldn't fire me. If you own a company and you own everything, you can't fire somebody. I could fire him, but he couldn't fire me. So he, on numerous occasions, and there has been conversations on a number of occasions, but again, I refrained from doing it, about a private lawsuit, about the number of times that he defamed me. He defamed me on public TV and television, in newspapers, saying he started the Brexit Party. Well, he didn't. You can find that in both Companies House, which was the company was bought during the Henry Bolton era, before Nigel had even left UKIP, a long time before that.
Okay.
And then through the Electoral Commission.
Okay. But what about people, Katherine, who say that you are now effectively trying to sabotage the best hope that we have had for smashing the uni party? And actually,
It's
these
what-
are now the tactics of the left that you
Yeah.
are employing against Nigel.
Absolutely. It's the worst hope. Nigel is bed blocking that space on the right, and he is just becoming the Conservative Party. In Runcorn, they have literally chosen an ex-Conservative who has said that she welcomes refugees and she's been to transgender parties. She is an absolute Conservative. All the Patriots have been removed. The space on the right has been wrecked, in my opinion now, for 30 years by that gentleman on the screen, because he has destroyed all other voices. He has destroyed people within UKIP. You have to ask yourself a question. Why did UKIP try for 25 years and never get an MP? Well, they got Douglas Carswell, who then Nigel fell out with Douglas Carswell because Douglas Carswell is an extremely upright person and wouldn't give him the short money. Every other potential good person, there was Godfrey Bloom, there was, we had latterly, we've had Howard Cox, we've had Rupert Lowe, going back, we've had Kilroy Silk. The list is about 50 names. These were either, in the case of Kilroy Silk, an ex-MP, or very active people. Stephen Wolfe is another one. The list has been put around. All these people never got the chance. They were all blown out of the party. On the average UKIP MEP list, they would start with 15 MEPs, and by the end of the term, they would have 5 left. This is not a normal party. You don't see the Conservative Party start with 170 MPs and end up with 50. This is the equivalent of how many people have been removed. And let's hear it clear. It's a psyops operation to remove you, to blacken you. And there appears to be no morality. There is no human decency. There's no legal decency. I had no agreement with Nigel. The only agreement was a verbal agreement that he would become the leader. It didn't say anything about the board. It didn't say, I didn't do 6 months' work for nothing. But yes, of course, people will say that it's sour grapes. But I'm saying this, the same as Rupert. This group of people have no detail. They have no real policies. They don't like academics. They remove everybody who is a good person who
Yeah,
could
so you
get
are
this
clear this is a declaration of war. Connor Tomlinson, you've just listened to all of this. Your reaction?
My reaction, Dan, is that so not knowing Farage, other than having interacted with him maybe like twice, and he was cordial to me at the time, so purely surface level interactions, is that everything I'm hearing, from the fallout to potential illegality, which I can't comment on because I haven't seen the documents, so I just have to take Catherine's word for it here, from the fact that Reform at every stage of the Rupert Lowe expulsion scuppered the KC's investigation. I mean, the KC herself, Jacqueline Perry, said they jumped the gun by releasing the report to the public with Lowe's staffers named without their personal information redacted a day before it was meant to be released so that Rupert couldn't do right of reply, calling the police on Rupert, which, if there was anything there, you would have done it months ago, and I expect that police complaint to be cleared, as I'm sure Rupert's team do as well, but also not a good look when you're meant to be the insurgent populist party that is against political correctness and throwing people in prison for speech violations. All of these things, all of these needless errors, let's set the personalities aside, are very disheartening for me, who is a party and person agnostic, who just wants a viable political vehicle to undo the Blairite Revolution, to roll back years of unwanted, unvetted, unfettered mass migration, and who wants a viable national populist vehicle to enact the policies that are sensible and reasonable and within the remit of possibility. And I understand we still have 4 years, right? I get it. You know, Trump had his mugshot taken in August 2023. People thought that it was his persecution was the lowest possible low, and you know now he's in the Oval Office. It's been almost 100 days, and he's firing out executive orders and deporting foreign criminals like it's going out of fashion. So there's still time to fix it. But my reaction is, Dan, I'm not feeling optimistic at the moment at the way things are going, and if this slow drip continues, I think there's going to be an electoral ceiling imposed on reform, not because the public doesn't have an appetite for right-wing policies, but because these kinds of dramas slow their momentum down.
And what do you want to happen from this potential police investigation, Katherine Blakelock? I mean, do you want to see Nigel Farage branded a criminal? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this?
Well, I wrote a letter on Twitter about a week ago to Nigel Farage, an open letter saying what I think should have been done. Effectively, well, let's put it this way. They have now created, with Reform 2025, an even worse position, an even more dictatorial, totalitarian, unremovable position. I would like the entire way parties are set up to be looked at, that there should not be this randomization of them. They should all be democratic, and they should not be for profit, and they should have open and transparent books, and they should have open and transparent leadership. I wrote this, and I said that, you know, that effectively Zia Youssef has somehow managed to pay £200,000 supposedly and get a position in Reform 2025 with a 50% control, where the chairman will control. We don't know who the chairman is. But those two people cannot be removed and are in conflict with the Reform Party. I don't want the Reform Party to break. I want them to be a proper constitution, and I want a proper vote from all the people who've been fired and left. And I would like a proper amount of, I would like people, everybody, to be allowed to join, and for this to be a proper free speech party. And I would like decent administrators who are open and transparent and don't bully and harass people to get their way and throw people out. This is just not acceptable. We need a free speech party. We need an absolutist free speech party under the American Constitution. And that's what I want. And they have made no progress to this whatsoever. In fact, I would argue that what they've done with the new company is probably worse than the old company.
Okay, Katherine Blakelock, Connor Tomlinson do stand by. Amid all of the drama for Nigel Farage and Reform UK, he has issued a brand new broadside at Rupert Lowe, speaking to his employers, GB News. Now, we know GB News is now a propaganda outfit for Farage and Reform UK. I don't say that lightly as someone who was a presenter on the channel, but sadly, they have refused to interview Rupert Lowe or give any coverage to his rape gang inquiry or show my exclusive interview with Rupert Lowe for weeks now. Yet Nigel is able to parrot a very negative narrative about Rupert on a daily basis. The latest is this claim that he was never a member of Reform UK, even though he was standing for them as an MP. I'll get reaction from Brexit Party founder Katherine Blakelock and Courage Media senior contributor Connor Tomlinson in just one moment. But first, let's watch.
We have vetted our candidates to a higher level and a higher standard than any party has ever done before for local elections.
Obviously, you're a young party. You've been in charge for 8 months, 9 months, but you do lack a structure. You have 4 MPs now in the Commons, but who is your Treasury spokesman? Who's your Home Affairs spokesman? I mean, Rupert Lowe has now left, but he had a point, didn't he, about the lack of structure, organisation.
Well, he never joined, actually. Oddly, he never joined. He stood for us without even being a member. I found that out recently, which is odd.
But he's right on the issue of structure.
Structure, we had to be.
You purport to be a party for next government.
You are comparing us with parties that have been around for 130 years or 200 years, right? We are a very, very much an infant in terms of time. First things first is to build a party structure, to be able...
From the grassroots up.
From the grassroots up, which is why I'm touring the country. This will be, I think, my last day in London until May the 2nd. So building a structure, building a party, getting candidates out fighting elections, they come before having a Treasury spokesman, a health spokesman. Do we have to do all of those things? Yes. And one of the next steps of our development will be after May the 1st, during the summer, we'll get a party board in place with elected representation. This is, I mean, we are cramming years of evolution into a very short time frame.
The problem is that the grassroots are so desperately unhappy at the moment, especially because so many of the branch chairs, for example, are either stepping down or being booted out because they haven't passed vetting, because at some point they maybe said they agree with Tommy Robinson, or at some point they used a swear word. Christopher Hope then asked Nigel Farage if he genuinely wanted to be Prime Minister.
And you want to be PM yourself, don't you? You campaign against all your life.
Do you know what? The reason I came back out of political retirement last year, partly frustration that Brexit wasn't being delivered anything like I thought it should be, but chiefly because I genuinely believe that we are in a cycle of economic decline, of societal decline, of cultural decline, which if it's not turned around in the space of a few short years, this country will literally be unrecognisable to all of us.
So you can imagine yourself going to the door of number 10.
So let me finish.
Yep.
I see myself right at the moment to be the right person to lead a completely new political movement, if you like, a political revolution, and I believe right now I am the best person to do that. If somebody younger and better looking comes along who's more capable than me, do you know what? I'll recognise.
But you want to be PM, do you?
He was also asked if Reform UK has now hit a poll ceiling.
And just finally, going back to this polling, do you think you've topped out? Can you go higher into the 30s? You're kind of mid-20s now, aren't you, with the other three parties? Is it have you gone as far as you can go? And
you know what? The progress we made is unbelievable. And it's why May the 1st matters so much. If people in elections think that if you vote Reform, you get Reform, if people start to think that in very large numbers, in big geographical areas in Britain, we'll go a lot higher.
Connor Tomlinson, what do you think of this messaging?
I think it's, going back to our previous conversation, Dan, disappointing that these avoidable dramas and the mishandling of the expulsion of Rupert Lowe, the expulsion at all of Lowe, Ben Habib and the like, has overshadowed Reform's quite effective local election ground campaign. I mean, Nigel gave a speech in Northamptonshire a day or two ago now, and the content of it was non-objectionable. He knows how to rile up a crowd. He seems to be in his element when he's touring the country, speaking to people in various localities, like he used to do with his touring roadshow when he was doing his show more consistently at GB News. I know he's taking quite a few weeks hiatus now. So it's frustrating that all of these internal issues, and there's still staffing problems over at Reform. A couple of people have departed that have not yet been announced as well, so there are still issues there, and the need to attack Rupert as well. In that interview, I mean, Nigel said an offhand comment of, well, I just found out that Rupert wasn't even a member when he ran for us. Bear in mind, Zia Youssef was still a member of the Conservatives until the 2nd of August 2024, and only renounced his membership when The Guardian published it and pointed it out. This is totally fair, by the way. I'm not attacking Nigel, Zia or Rupert in any of this, because the Conservatives were, for a time, won the party of government to the only game in town. And so lots of people, myself included, you, Dan, when you were still interviewing Conservative ministers and trying to hold them to account, were trying to nudge the government towards doing sensible things, to try and make the Conservative Party, if not electable, because we were indifferent about which party was in office, just accountable to the great many of the British public that it had betrayed during COVID, during immigration, during Brexit, and the like. So the idea that Rupert Lowe is disloyal to the cause, that him not being a member when he became one of Reform's few and then most vocal MPs, is a mark against his character. I'm just confused whether that needed to be mentioned. The final thing, if I may, is, and it's the clip that you played in your opening monologue, the idea that because the inquiry lacks statutory powers, now it's pointless. No, I agree with Nigel back in January. This is the morally right thing to do. It's the morally correct thing to do, to have victims, to have experts, to have journalists televise all of the evidence about the Pakistani rape gangs, to put it out there, to increase pressure on the government to bring forward a statutory inquiry, especially after, and this came from Conservative MP Robbie Moore yesterday, especially after the government have decided to fire the independent KC that they originally put to set forward the frame of reference, and put ministers from the Home Office, which include the Muslim activists that work there and that have neutralized Prevent's ability to monitor Islamic terrorism, and ministers in charge. The government are going to be overseeing the inquiry. They've cut funding, and then they're making the 5 local places out of the 50 that were affected by the rape gangs compete for funding, and they can spend the funding on things other than the actual inquiry. So of course they're going to do that, because they want to continue the cover-up. So what's important is we get all the evidence out in the open, we increase the pressure on the government to bring forward a national inquiry, and even though we don't have statutory powers, one, you could probably bring forward a private prosecution, like they did for the Manchester airport, and I commend Reform on doing that. But two, not showing up is as good as an admission of guilt. And so all of their implications, all the social workers, all the politicians, all the journalists that helped hide this massive abuse of children across our country, all of them not showing up. In absentia, we can read the list of their failures and crimes, and then the public will know just how much these people have done to children.
Yeah, and of course, the rape gang inquiry has signed up Sammy Woodhouse as one of the advisors, which I think is a great thing. Katherine Blakelock, Connor's talking about Nigel's brilliance on stage and the way that he is just able to connect with an audience. I want to play you one of the jokes that he made this week. It's divided opinion, and I'm very interested to know whether you love it or loathe it.
We must say we're male, female, or one of the other 69 genders. And frankly, whatever it is. I chose that number for a reason, you know that, yeah. I chose it because I like to be irreverent.
Katherine?
Yes.
Do you like that?
Well, yes, but he's not a stand-up comedian, and this is the problem. And he's not, a performing circus artist, and he's not an old crooner. And sometimes I have seen these shows and think that I'm going to some type of Julio Iglesias production. This is the problem. Can I just make one other point?
Please.
Which is going back to the former clip about this new party rhetoric that goes on. Nigel is really good at spinning a line. This new party rhetoric is just total rubbish.
So the whole political revolution thing.
Look, he was in UKIP for 25 years, and that inner circle of people, of whom I could name, and that inner circle of people is more important than the elected MPs, are the same people, with the exception of Richard Tice.
So are you saying he's part of the establishment now, part of the political establishment?
That's the problem with Nigel. Nigel has never quite been accepted as the political establishment. But I want to go back to my point, which was the reason the Brexit Party got started was because he lost the vote at the NEC for the European elections in UKIP. If he hadn't lost that vote, and Gerard Batten won that vote, the Brexit Party wouldn't have happened. He would have gone back to UKIP, and then we wouldn't have had any of this narrative about we're a brand new party and we haven't got any depth and we haven't got this. It's all excuses. It's the UKIP had depth, UKIP had branches, UKIP had people who could write manifestos and who were spokespeople. And then the Brexit Party was disbanded, and then we've got another narrative that we've got another new people. It was the sanitation of Brexit part of UKIP, and then we change it to Reform, and then we have another new set of people.
Yeah, so you're effectively saying it's been set up to be a Tory replacement party rather than something leading to a genuine revolution.
It's
and
a
what
Tory
we need is a genuine revolution, which will include, for example, mass deportations of the 2 million illegals who are already here. And by the way, I say 2 million, I reckon there's already 2 million here, but certainly by 2029 there will be. I also want to show you this part of the interview where Nigel was asked about his relationship with Donald Trump, because there has been a lot of whispering lately that that relationship has cooled. No one really knows if it's connected to the Rupert Lowe situation and the fact that Elon Musk endorsed Lowe, or if it's just because Trump is dealing with Keir Starmer. But I think Nigel's answer was quite fascinating. So, Connor, I'll get your reaction, but if we can just watch this together first.
Have you talked to the White House? Are they using you as a back channel? We thought that might happen when he came in, and right now would be quite helpful.
What's really interesting is that in the first term, I spoke to the White House quite a lot. In this term, I haven't, because I can't be seen to interfere unless the government wants me to be useful or to be helpful. I have said many times, I don't just know the president, I know half the cabinet.
And you've told Keir Starmer that on the floor of the House. You offered it, buying privately.
I've done it many times. They're choosing to go their own route, and fine. Perhaps they're better qualified than me to do it. I just think that, you know, when it comes to the people holding the big key jobs in economics, I just happen to know these people, happen to be friendly with these people. Look, I repeat the offer. If the government wants me to help, I would help, and I would do it. Even though they're a Labour government, I do it in the national interest.
But Connor, I don't actually know if it is just the fact that Trump is dealing with the leader of the country, because there's actually nothing to stop him dealing with Farage. And I'm very taken by this Truth Social post from Trump. I'm assuming, by the way, this is real, Connor, because it's been reposted by Elon Musk on X. And it's about Marine Le Pen and the witch hunt against her in France. And it really is the type of language I would love to have heard from Nigel Farage on Marine Le Pen. He concludes by saying, Connor, it is all so bad for France and the great French people, no matter what side they are on. Free Marine Le Pen. And I just sort of feel like where Musk and Trump are at is certainly where I'm at on these issues, but Farage has wanted to distance himself from Le Pen, and the National Rally wanted to distance himself from the AfD in Germany. He just seems to be in a different place.
Yes, I think that's been unwise. If I remember correctly, at the Birmingham rally before the election, Farage was quoted in Unheard as saying that he disagrees with Le Pen and he wouldn't ever show solidarity with her because of her economic policies. And then in a recent interview with ITV, he insinuated that the other European parties are too far right for him to ally with, whereas they're very popular, very reasonable. The AfD, for example, are just a migration restrictionist free market party led by a lesbian woman whose partner is a I think, Sri Lankan migrant. So she's not the best candidate for the second incarnation of Adolf Hitler in the world. I think that Nigel shouldn't allow his perceptions of these parties to be shaped too much by a hostile media which hates reform just as much as it hates them. On the point about Nigel's interactions with the Americans, I'll take him at his word. I mean, I know Trump's a very busy man, and I think it's proper for him to not interfere unless asked in a formal capacity. And I think that Farage would make a very good US ambassador compared to Peter Mandelson or the idiot David Lammy that's currently occupying the position of foreign secretary. But I do happen to know from some of my American contacts, private conversations and also public conversations with the likes of Sebastian Gorka on the election night stream that we did at my former outlet, lotuseaters.com, that the State Department are not happy at all with Nigel denouncing mass deportations. They've seen the clips. They're not happy with the treatment of Rupert Lowe and the statement that said mass deportations is a dark and dangerous use of rhetoric. They're not happy with the Stephen Edgerton clip. They're not happy with the Winston Marshall clip. And they have made this known publicly to Nigel, with Sebastian Gorka using, let's say, some fairly insulting language, saying that Nigel's current position is cucked, language that doesn't lead us to believe that they have a very constructive relationship at the moment. And Seb Gorka is very senior in the administration. But also, I happen to know that this has been voiced to Farage by members of the administration. And they've said, look, it makes us harder to push our line if one of our closest allies is saying that our flagship policy that Trump campaigned on and won a plurality of Hispanics, including Hispanic men, by promising mass deportations, if you're saying that this is evil and far right, it doesn't jibe with the strategic goals of the administration. So can you please stop that? And so it'll be interesting to see if Farage listens in the years to come.
Breaking right now, Nana Akua, the GB News presenter, has made an astonishing revelation live on air after hearing the news that the anti-abortion campaigner Livia Tossici-Bolt has been found guilty in the latest British free speech outrage simply for holding up a sign outside a clinic in Bournemouth saying, "Here to talk if you want." That was it. This case, of course, has drawn the ire of the US State Department, specifically the new Vice President J.D. Vance. But Judge Austin said in court today that it was beyond reasonable doubt that Tossici-Bolt was engaging in an act of disapproval of abortion services on the days in question. She lacks insight that her presence could have a detrimental effect on the women attending the clinic, their associates, staff, and members of the public. Now, Nana Akua was presenting live on GB News when the verdict came through. I'm good friends with Nana. She's a wonderful woman. And I was really struck by the fact that right at the end of the interview, where she was speaking to an anti-abortion activist, she revealed that it was a protester outside an abortion clinic, just like Livia Tossici-Bolt, that actually stopped her going through with an abortion herself. It's an incredible piece of television. Watch.
Evidence of women who have been served precisely by this kind of freedom of speech.
Listen,
and
Peter,
action.
it helped
and
me.
that's what's being stopped here.
Peter, it helped me because I didn't have the abortion I was going to have because somebody was out there. But I don't think that was bad. They weren't in my face, and I'm glad that I was influenced by that. Peter Williams, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. He's the director for Family Education Trust and a former executive for the Office for the Right to Life.
Joined now by Katherine Blakelock, the Brexit Party founder, and Connor Tomlinson, senior contributor at Courage Media. Connor, that was just an extraordinary piece of television. Firstly, because Nana Akua does things in her own style. It wasn't some big emotional monologue. It was just like, yep, a protester like this outside an abortion clinic actually stopped me going through with my abortion. Now, I know Nana's two children, right? I know the special, incredible relationship that she has with that young boy and young girl who I've met. She's an amazing mother. And wow, this is exactly why you would argue, I guess, that what Livia is doing outside these abortion clinics, which, by the way, isn't violent or anything like that or threatening. She's just saying, if you want to talk, I'm here, is so important. What did you make of that revelation from Nana?
Yeah, it was beautiful to hear that Nana has that relationship with her kids, and I'm so glad that that happened to her. I think it's tragic to know that over 200,000 unborn children die every single year from abortion in the UK, something that's been made only worse by the Conservative government in two forms, if I may. Firstly, they made permanent the ability to get on-demand postal abortion pills, which were being mailed out to women during the COVID lockdowns when getting a GP appointment in person was scarce. They've made permanently access to that in law, which means that there are going to be lots of at-home abortions under coerced circumstances taking place that nobody ever even knows about. So these kinds of protesters or conscientious objectors that are either praying silently in their head or offering consenting adults to have a conversation about abortion, they're never going to reach those women. But also we talk a lot about, and you hear this on the likes of LBC and the rest is politics, you'll hear a lot about how American fundamentalist Christians are creeping into the UK and coercing women from refraining from accessing their abortion rights. And it's like, okay, lots of women in the UK are likely feeling coerced financially by a partner, by a family member, by the broader culture into aborting their innocent unborn child. So offering a conversation to say, no, you have options, you have agency, you have many charities, yes, often motivated by Christianity, but who will support you as a single mother or a struggling family. So you don't have to end the life of your child just because the circumstances are inconvenient to you. That will save lots of lives. And it's never mentioned how that is actually combating coercion that many people don't know is going on in the first place. And it's because in all instances here, our prevailing secular liberal morality defines a child not as a life that is worthy of protection, but as a lifestyle accessory or an unjust dependent care obligation forced by accident onto a parent who is otherwise pursuing their career goals or having casual sex or the like. Nowhere in there is the child's well-being put to the forefront. The only people doing that are these protesters like Isabel Vaughan-Spruce, like Adam Smith Connor, like Livia Tossici-Bolt, all of whom are offering conversations and offering prayers to commiserate the taken lives by the abortion industry, who are caring for the children rather than the appetites of adults. One final thing I will say on this as well is the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labour within the State Department under Marco Rubio are very concerned about this. We saw the Telegraph reporting the US would not be interested in lifting its tariffs or pursuing a UK trade deal without securing freedom of speech first. And people might wave that away as a token gesture. No, these guys are very serious. They have some very committed Christians that have been put in the State Department now. They see mass migration as a human rights violation, as J.D. Vance said at the Munich Security Conference, and they are very concerned about the persecution of Christians and their conscience with these cases represented by ADF International as an example. So these guys are serious about what they say, and I hope that they can leverage the kind of democratic pressure to get this conviction overturned.
Gosh, I hope so too. I mean, Katherine Blakelock, doesn't it make you sick that slippery Starmer can sit in the Oval Office and look JD Vance in the eye and say we have free speech in the United Kingdom when, there's a litany of examples, Lucy Connolly, Julie Sweeney behind bars for Facebook and X posts. Alison Pearson has the police turn up on her door. And now a guilty verdict in this case.
Well, when I was in Runcorn and talking to people who were really not well off in council houses or ex-council houses, one person said to me about 2 days ago, under the Conservatives, we were all just fed up with them. We didn't like them. We thought they were useless. They ruined our country by letting 10 million immigrants in. But now we are frightened. We fear. And I think that says it all, because people do not know what they can say, and they are constrained in what they're posting, in what they, what the conversations, and there have been instances of conversations in the pub. I don't know if you know of the case where Gina Miller took a Lord or Viscount to court over a private WhatsApp group where he had said something on a private WhatsApp group, like he would like to do something to Gina Miller, and he was jailed for it on a private WhatsApp group. These things are chilling, and this is our biggest
threat.
Chilling
is the word, indeed.
And you can see the EU, if we lose platforms, if we lose Twitter...
Well, yeah, they want to take them all away. I mean, they want to take away free speech.
To post films of old ladies having their handbags snatched, or the Afghan slitting somebody's throat outside McDonald's in Paris. What do we have left?
Totally. And of course, JD Vance has spoken about another very similar case publicly. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he says anything publicly about this. Watch.
British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. After British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution.
Connor Tomlinson, he's passionate about this.
Yeah, well, the State Department have already issued a statement a few weeks ago saying we're concerned about freedom of expression in the United Kingdom and are monitoring Dr. Tossici-Bolt's case. I expect that the State Department will issue some kind of statement in the next 24 hours. I know that they feel passionately about this. It should be also noted that all of these measures were made much worse under the Conservatives, and now Labour are just seizing upon them because, well, it's in line with their ideology to accelerate them. But both non-crime hate incidents and the abortion buffer zones were made worse under legislation that was passed in 2022. So it's the Police Crime and Sentencing and Courts Act. So non-crime hate incidents were told to be used in lieu of when a public order offence could be recorded. And also the dwelling defence was removed that was under the Public Order Act of 1986. So if you said something in the privacy of your own home, very much like saying it in the privacy of your own WhatsApp, you couldn't be prosecuted. But under the new guidance, instead, if you said something in the privacy of your own home and someone was offended about it, well, you're de facto labelled a criminal by having a non-crime hate incident slapped against you. And this is where we get this sort of legislation we see in Scotland, for example, where if you're seen to be praying silently inside your own head near an open window in your own home and you live within the buffer zone, you can be prosecuted, as Scottish members of Parliament have said. And then the buffer zones were originally just in Bournemouth at a local council. That's abhorrent enough as it is, telling that the mourners to be silent to placate the consciences of murderers, but then the Conservative government allowed them to be made nationwide. So we now have around particular, let's say, sacraments of the prevailing liberal morality, complete and utter censorship. You're not allowed to protest this or even be upset that someone has been harmed in the process of someone carrying out their abortion rights. And so the Conservatives are just as culpable about this as the Labour Party. And what's notable is not a single party has spoken out about this, and not a single party has a policy to change this. It's very frustrating to see the likes of Robert Jenrick and Robbie Moore making excellent videos about the Chagos Islands and two-tier sentencing guidance and Labour's insistence on watering down even their local inquiries for the rape gangs. None of them have spoken out about this yet. I expect Jenrick should do eventually if he's wise to it. But also, where's Reform UK's videos on this? Yeah. Where's the tweets on it? This is a serious crisis. This is a blatant example of thought crime in the country, and no politician saying anything.
Very good point. Very, very good point. Do stand by. Connor Tomlinson and Katherine Blakelock. Much more from you in just 1 minute, because the other madness of the week, with all of this going on, the MSM, who I think are engaging in a psyop, believe the most important story is Adolescence on Netflix. I'll tell you what's going on in just 1 minute. But first, you know how often I talk about the need for free speech to be protected. Well, I've been increasingly thinking of the need for personal protection from snoopers, bad actors, and hackers online. And I'm delighted to tell you, I've now found the fail-safe solution. But what's more, this VPN, or virtual private network, to use the full term, the sort of jingo, is also a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. So let me introduce you to Surfshark. This is an incredible and easy to use service that I use every day to encrypt my internet traffic, which means my online activities stay safe so you can shop, you can stream, you can browse, you conduct your banking online in complete privacy. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe online. This is what I really love. You can access your favorite entertainment and news shows and channels from streaming services like Hulu, iPlayer, HBO Max, Peacock, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, wherever you want, as if you're watching in another country. And you can do so within seconds. Really handy, by the way, if you're traveling for work or on holiday, because you can get all your favorite content from home, including sports, without having to deal with any sort of geo-blocking, which can be so annoying. This is an insurance policy too against creeping censorship in so many countries that we talk about on this show all the time. But just one example, France has blocked Rumble. You can't watch Outspoken on Rumble if you're in France. Well, you can if you have Surfshark. A VPN can also save you money too, because you can get the best deals from websites that change their prices depending on where you're buying from. Loads of other benefits too. Surfshark can be used on unlimited devices, meaning your entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. They have over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries with a world of choice at your fingertips. By the way, don't worry if this is your first time using a VPN. It's super easy, really, really easy. But if you do have any issues, there is 24/7 customer service. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. You can just click on the link in the description box below. What's more, Surfshark's so confident it's the best VPN in the world that you can try it. This is amazing. For a full 30 days, if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. But now, back to the show. Okay, I'm now completely convinced. There is a psyop at play without any doubt. You know, I've been onto this regarding Netflix and Adolescence for a number of weeks now. This is the drama where you have a young 15-year-old working class kid from Liverpool who becomes a terrible murderer. And actually, the story was based on a real-life murderer, but that murderer was a black kid in Croydon, South London, who stabbed a young girl to death over a teddy bear. But of course, the ethnicity was changed. Now, part of this psyop is the media saying, oh, no, that never happened. Well, it did. I've read the quote from the creator proving that it did. Colin Brazier, great man, he's onto this. He wrote, there's a whiff of Salem in the air, last detected when anyone who declined to take the knee was instantly categorized as morally subnormal. I remember that because I refused to take the knee. I refused to post the black square on my Instagram account. I also compare it to the same sort of psyop that was going on around the NHS and going out with your pots and pans, what was it, on a Thursday night in the middle of what was a ridiculous lockdown. But I want to show you the MSM in action over this, and the worst offenders have been LBC, the Labour Broadcasting Company, which decided the biggest story in Britain this week was the fact that the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, had declined to watch a fictional television show. Reaction from Connor Tomlinson and Katherine Blakelock in just one moment, but first have a look.
You were in any way concerned with public conversation, if you were in any way invested in the national conversation, right, or public discourse, if you were in any way connected to it, invested in it, dependent upon it for your livelihood, like I am and like Nick is and Sheila, the idea that you would have swerved this programme is unthinkable.
I pay attention, but I'm not going to watch every single thing that everybody's watching on Netflix. I do know what they're watching, and I know what it's about, and I've given a view that it is a work of fiction that is interesting, that touches on a problem in society, but there are bigger problems, such as Islamic terrorism and that kind of radicalization. And the story which it is based on has been fundamentally changed. And so creating policy on a work of fiction rather than on reality is the real issue.
It's not just the ignorance and the sort of blithe arrogance that's offensive. It's the reveling in it. It's the somehow being proud of being an absolute wombat, isn't it? I think I think the claim that the story it's based on has been changed is a racist lie that has been
It's not a
perpetrated by
lie!
the sort of terminally online far right. So,
oh my goodness, the creator literally said it. That guy is so infuriating. But GB News has been on this too with Kemi Badenoch.
Have you watched Adolescence yet? The PM had a meeting yesterday around this Netflix show. Do you think white boys are being wrongly singled out here?
Well, I think Adolescence is a fictional story. It's based on a real story, but my understanding is that the boy who committed that crime was not white. So people can do whatever they like in fiction. The Prime Minister should not be building policy on fiction. He should be building policy on reality. What is the reality? The phones are disrupting schools, and not enough schools have effective bans. When I asked him last week about having a ban at PMQs, what did he say? That it wasn't necessary. He believes it's a gimmick. So he's not doing the things that we need to do in reality. He's watching Netflix and having roundtables about a Netflix documentary. It's a gimmick. He thinks that he's going to touch the people of this country. Oh, they're all watching Netflix, so I'll just talk about the thing they're watching on TV. No, he needs to talk about what's happening in their lives right now. That's the bills that are going up, the jobs tax that's going to kill jobs, lower wages, and let's get phones out of schools as well, because it's distracting our young people.
Do white boys get a raw deal in this country?
I don't think that we should start splitting people according to ethnicity in that way. When I was a minister, I put out a report that showed that white working class boys, not white boys, white working class boys were the most disadvantaged. And I fought for them. Dawn Butler was calling me the white face, the black face of white supremacy, all sorts of nonsense, because I was talking about common sense. No one has done more than me in order to highlight the truth and get us to start treating everyone in this country the same, irrespective of what colour their skin is. We've got to move away from all these characteristics that are dividing us and start talking about the thing that we all share, which is being British.
But even Nick Ferrari, who I think has now just been drinking the LBC Kool-Aid, was totally going along with that narrative.
What have you learnt from watching Adolescence? It is now setting in part the political conversation. It's the #1 show here and in the US. It's the highest watched Netflix offering of all time. Forget about Baby Reindeer. Now, tell me I'm being a journalist here. You are a journalist here. Thank you. I feel she should have, even if she'd said, well, you know what? When I heard the Prime Minister talk about it, I'm afraid I only got through the first hour last night, but don't spoil it, Nick. I'm going to watch the rest of it on the weekend. When I asked Kemi Badenoch, what have you learnt from that hit show? A leading politician such as yourself, not to be in tune with what a lot of people are talking about, that's almost a dereliction of duty, some would suggest. And not least as you have a child approaching their teens.
Yes, I do. So I pay attention, but I'm not going to watch every single thing that everybody's watching on Netflix. I do know what they're watching, and I know what it's about. And I've given a view that it is a work of fiction that is interesting, that touches on a problem in society, but there are bigger problems, such as Islamic terrorism and that kind of radicalization. And the story which it is based on has been fundamentally changed. And so creating policy on a work of fiction rather than on reality is the real issue.
Does it matter that the Leader of the Opposition, not least as the Prime Minister talked about how he'd watched it with his teenage children, just to keep you informed, Mrs. Badenoch's children are a little bit younger. She has her eldest child will be approaching their teens fairly shortly, so she has no children in that age bracket yet. Both of the Prime Minister's children are in it, and he talked about it. Does it matter that she's not watched it?
No, it doesn't. You have all gone completely mad because you're the one saying that this is a work of fiction. So if it is a work of fiction, she absolutely doesn't need to watch it. It is a drama. The reality is, though, the psyop going on is because, indeed, the story was based on this guy, Hassan Sentamu, who was the teenager jailed for life for the murder of Elian. And the thing is, Connor Tomlinson, the quotes exist where the creator spoke about that murder.
Yeah, I thought Kemi Badenoch's answer, and I'm not usually a supporter of hers, but to the question, why haven't you watched the latest fad on Netflix, which is being used as a pretext to censor anyone and everyone online? Why haven't you watched that? That was excellent. It's essentially, yeah, this has been entirely invented as a moral panic by the state, by MPs talking about it, by them seizing upon a fictional example that has been recast to be appropriate, the respective races of the perpetrator, recast to be appropriate for the state's multicultural narrative. Yeah, none of this is particularly relevant when we're having problems like Islamic radicalization, which prevent the body that is charged with monitoring anti-extremism has completely dropped the ball on, mainly because it's got a lobby of 700 Islamic activists working at the Home Office. And she's right to say, as a UDAN, this isn't representative of reality, because in 2023, there was some polling by the ISD that found that 1 in 5 young people between the ages of 16 to 24 had a positive view of Tate. Now, this is concentrated among young men, but it's more concentrated among racial lines. So it's 41% of Black respondents, 31% of Asian respondents, and that's not broken down by Chinese versus second generation Pakistani, and only 15% of white kids. And it's because Andrew Tate does not really have a culture that jibes with the sensitivities of young Englishmen, but the kind of status displays and the polygamous mating habits that he has, and his running a porn empire, certainly jibe with things like rap culture, which has been imported over from the US to the UK. With young drill rappers. Yes, and also what's even more pronounced is that Adolescence doesn't depict the kind of perpetrator's family life that leads to these killings. I mean, the guy who actually did it in Croydon was sent to a Ugandan boarding school and physically abused, and his home was quite tumultuous. 46% of kids reach 14 in this country and don't live with their dad. Broken down by ethnicity, that's 57% of Black Caribbean, 44% of Black African, and only 22% of white British. So you're more likely to join a gang, you're more likely to commit knife crime, you're more likely to kill a female classmate in this country if you're a young Black boy. That is a fact, and that is a fact that conveniently Adolescence and the political circus around it has skated over in order to use Andrew Tate as a kind of boogeyman to justify online censorship. I'm not a fan of him, but I'm also not caught up in this moral panic.
And you know what really infuriates me? That now, if you actually try and say that it was based on fact or based on something that actually happened, you're just totally bombarded online by article after article from the MSM, boosted, of course, by big tech, saying, oh, no, there was no race swapping. This isn't made up. It was Stephen Graham himself in the Radio Times, like a magazine in the UK, who said, Katherine Blakelock, then there was another young girl in South London who was stabbed to death at a bus stop, citing the tragic death of Elian Andam, who was killed by Hassan Sentiment after she got off the bus outside the Whitgift Centre on her way to Old Palace of John Whitgift School in Croydon on September the 27th, 2023. So this big conspiracy theory, Katherine Blakelock, that apparently people like me are just making up, was based on words from the actual creator, Stephen Graham. That's why I believe there is a psyop going on around this show, because they're trying to make us forget that it was Stephen Graham who admitted that it was based on this black killer.
You know, I don't think this stuff makes any difference anymore, because people have eyes, people go to London parks, they go to streets, they see rubbish all over the country, they see things happening. And the more they do this, the less they believe a single thing that comes out of Netflix with its Snow White or its other films. They don't believe newspapers. They don't watch the BBC. The people who believe this stuff already are left-wing. They're left-wing socialist champagne socialists, generally living in very nice areas, who are not exposed to knife crime, rubbish, violence, harassment, and it washes over them. And it's the same with the id, with the King, the civil service, the Home Office, and Keir Starmer wishing everybody a happy end of Ramadan rather than wishing them a happy Mothering Sunday. People just think the country has gone bonkers, and this is the problem. Going back to reform Reform are in that space to talk about these things, to be an absolute free speech party, to have some people talking, agreeing, and some people not agreeing, and being an open space. And they are catastrophically failed in that. And I want to just make one other point. I know I'm moving it back, but I would never be selected for Reform. I mean, and Nigel chose me, but I just want to go back to this point about the Conservatives. Have you ever looked, Dan, at what colour their logo is? Have you looked at it? Light blue. Well, it wasn't light blue when I did it.
What colour was it?
Well, it was black and white when it was originally formatted. And it was given a light blue logo. And I think this is incredibly symbolic. It tells you everything you need to know. Look at it and you know what you're getting. You're getting a worse, weaker Conservative Party with no depth.
Katherine Blakelock, it has been fascinating to have you today. Connor, founder of the Brexit Party. Connor Tomlinson, senior contributor to Courage Media, co-host of the Deprogrammed podcast at the New Culture Forum. You know I always love having you too. Thank you both so much. Now, of course, because it is a Friday, we do something pretty special, which is revealing the worst Briton in the world this week. That is when we take our union jackasses over the course of the week and put them up to a vote. So many of you always weigh in. And this particular week, my goodness, there were some good choices. On Monday, Tahir Ali. That's because he is back in a airport in Pakistan. James O'Brien, need I say more after what we've seen over the course of the today? Prince Harry for throwing his own charity under a bus, and Sadiq Khan for his constant refusal to countenance a Pakistani Muslim rape gang. The results are in. In fourth position with 8% of the vote, Tahir Ali. In third position with 11% of the vote, James O'Brien. The runner-up, Prince Harry. But the runaway winner, with 64% of the vote, the worst Briton in the world this week is, of course, Sadiq Khan. And goodness gracious me, he always deserves it in my view. Okay, don't go anywhere because we've got lots of news breaking in the uncancelled after show as well. What a day to end the week on. So much going on because there are astonishing revelations that now link the Sussex squad to the closest ally of Meghan Markle. We have shocking reporting involving our very own According to Taz, who will hit back at Daniel Martin, then analysis from our royal mastermind, Angela Levin. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble. We move to our own platform to continue the conversation at www.outspoken.live. Before I go, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, but I do want to tell you about a special batch of shows coming all next week. We are revealing the 50 worst people in the UK today. This is going to be so much fun. Having loads of my favourites across the course of the week to help us count down. Father Calvin Robinson, Darren Grimes, Andre Walker, Alex Phillips. Honestly, this is going to be great fun. It's a special week of shows, so please do be here as usual. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.